this. For years they called 3I Atlas a comet. Harmless, ordinary, forgettable. But now, the new photos are out, and they reveal what was long suspected. Atlas isn't behaving like a rock. It's building like a machine. In these images, lines where there should be cracks, shadows that don't belong, heat signatures that shouldn't exist, you're about to see them, frame by frame. And when you do, you'll understand why scientists are whispering words they swore they'd never use. Artificial, controlled, alive. What I'm about to reveal doesn't rewrite astronomy, it rewrites who's really watching whom. Before we begin, feel free to let us know in the comments what time it is for you and where you're listening from. We love staying connected with our community. Now, it's time to close your eyes. Let's begin. You thought this was another comet, a frozen rock drifting silently through the dark. You were wrong. Because the new photos, those high-resolution frames no one was supposed to see, show something that breaks every rule we know about celestial objects. Straight lines, precise symmetry, structured heat signatures. Nature doesn't build that way, but engineering does. Look at the hexagonal core. Each ridge perfectly spaced, each angle sharp enough to suggest intention. Here's the part that should make you pause. The temperature along those lines isn't random, it's 43 Kelvin hotter than the rest of the surface. No solar heating, no friction, just energy. Sustained, consistent. Ask yourself, what's feeding it? NASA called it a calibration error. ESA blamed cosmic interference. But the timestamps match, the data aligns, and the probability of two independent instruments producing identical errors is less than 1 in a billion. So either the universe just rolled snake eyes, or someone's lying. Here's the real question. Why does the glow pulse every 19 seconds? Because comets don't blink. They scatter sunlight. They don't signal with it. Yet Atlas flashes in perfect rhythm. Bright, dim, bright like a beacon counting down to something. And just hours after the first images leaked, the object's spin stabilized. No wobble, no drift, controlled motion, deliberate rotation, as if it wanted us to get a clear view, as if it knew exactly when the cameras were watching. You can call that coincidence. You can call it anomaly. But if you connect the dots, the geometry, the heat, the rhythm, it's not randomness you're looking at, it's awareness. Because what those photos reveal isn't a comet frozen in time. It's a machine preparing to wake up. And then came the leak. An internal memo from the European Southern Observatory marked Level 4, containment required. The document described anomalous light phase activity inconsistent with natural rotation. Translation? Atlas was blinking back. The memo vanished within hours, scrubbed from the archive, replaced by a sanitized statement about processing inconsistencies. But by then, screenshots were already circulating among researchers. Those who spoke publicly were silenced by non-disclosure agreements. Those who didn't are whispering now. Here's what the data shows. Between July 18th and August 2nd, Atlas emitted 3 short bursts of infrared radiation, each lasting exactly 2 seconds. Each directed not into space, but toward Earth. It wasn't a flare. It wasn't reflection. It was transmission. The frequencies fall inside the same range used for interplanetary communication. Coincidence? Maybe once, but not 3 times. Not with timing that precise. Because 4.2 seconds isn't random, it's the exact rotational delay between each visible light pulse. And yet, somehow, no major observatory has issued a formal statement. NASA's press office called it photometric interference. Harvard's astrophysics team called it artifact drift. The Webb telescope team? Silent. Completely. No logs, no updates, no comments. Which makes you wonder, what did they see that we weren't supposed to? Here's the real question. If Atlas can emit targeted signals, then it's aware of direction. If it's aware of direction, it's tracking something. And if it's tracking something, then maybe it's not passing through our solar system by accident. Maybe it's following a path, a course, a mission. Because when scientists backtracked its trajectory, they found something chilling. The path doesn't lead through the void. It leads straight toward the orbital plane of Mars. Every adjustment, every pulse, every flash, all pointing to one destination. And if Atlas is what the new data suggests, a craft, not a comet, then the countdown isn't to impact. It's to arrival. And Mars is about to get a visitor that was never meant to leave a return address. You think this is about a rock moving through space. You think the data is just noise. You're wrong. Because when scientists lined up every photo, every pulse, every heat signature, something emerged. A rhythm, a code, a pattern too precise to be natural. The light curve of 3I Atlas doesn't fade like a comet's should. It spikes, sharp, timed, intentional. Every pulse, every 19-second flash falls into a sequence, 6 bursts, pause, 6 bursts, pause, repeating endlessly since the first confirmed sighting. And here's where it gets impossible. Those intervals align perfectly with an ancient frequency first recorded in 1977. You know the one, the wow signal. The radio burst from deep space that's never been explained, never repeated until now. Ask yourself, what are the odds that the same numerical rhythm appears again, 50 years later, inside a comet's light? When astrophysicists ran a Fourier transform to analyze the signal embedded in the brightness fluctuations, they found mathematical symmetry that shouldn't exist in nature. 6 harmonics stacked cleanly over one another, 6 points of reference, 6 axes of rotation, 6, always 6. The same 6-sided geometry visible in the thermal scans of Atlas's core. The same number encoded in the pulses. Here's the part that's keeping every researcher awake tonight. The harmonics correspond to a pattern used in binary data compression, identical to algorithms used in modern digital communication. In other words, 3I Atlas isn't just blinking, it's broadcasting. The team at the Max Planck Institute in Germany tried to dismiss it as random noise caused by solar interference. But when they filtered the signal through their model, the pattern persisted across wavelengths, across instruments, across continents. The same intervals, the same 6 bursts. No deviation, not one. So here's the real question. Who or what is generating it? Because if Atlas is natural, then it's the first celestial object to ever synchronize energy output across visible and infrared spectrums simultaneously. If it's not natural, then we're staring at the first interstellar transmission humanity has ever received. And it's not a message sent to us, it's a message encoded in the object itself. But that's not all the data shows. When you plot Atlas's position over time, the light pulses don't just repeat, they align. Each burst corresponds to moments when the comet crosses key orbital longitudes of the inner planets. The 6th pulse hits as it passes Mars. The next series as it approaches Venus, then Jupiter. Think about that. A synchronized pattern tied to planetary alignment. You can call that chance. You can call that cosmic coincidence. But when probability models were run, the odds came out to 1 in 3.7 billion. And you don't build odds like that accidentally. Here's the part nobody is talking about publicly. A classified report from an internal NASA source claims the timing of these pulses coincides with electromagnetic spikes detected in Earth's upper atmosphere. Tiny fluctuations in the ionosphere, measurable but unexplained. As if something out there and something down here are momentarily syncing up. One analyst called it gravitational whispering. Another called it the handshake. And it gets worse. The last pulse recorded just 48 hours ago wasn't like the others. It split, 2 flashes, side by side. One weak, one strong. And for the first time, the stronger pulse didn't point toward Mars. It pointed directly toward Earth. Ask yourself why now? Why change the angle after weeks of precision? Why break the pattern unless the message had already been received? Some researchers believe this is all a setup, that the sequence is a marker, a countdown, each pulse marking a step in a larger process. And when the final burst hits, when the timing, geometry, and planetary alignment reach perfect resonance, it could trigger something hidden within the object itself. A reaction, a release, a transformation. Because the new spectral scans show Atlas's composition is changing. Slowly, its carbon dioxide ratio is rising. Its reflectivity is increasing. The object is getting brighter, hotter, more active, as if powered by an internal source awakening in stages. This isn't decay, it's ignition. You can keep calling it coincidence, anomaly, artifact. But the evidence stacks higher than the lies meant to bury it. The geometry, the timing, the coded light, the planetary alignment, the temperature shifts. Each fact alone might be explainable. Together, they form a pattern no natural process can replicate. So, here's what you need to ask yourself before the next image arrives. What happens when a message isn't just meant to be read, but to activate something watching from the other side? You thought the story ended with strange light and coded pulses. You thought the danger was in the data. But the real threat is in the direction it's moving. Because 3I Atlas isn't drifting, it's aiming. Every new calculation confirms it. The object isn't tumbling through the void like a frozen wanderer. It's gliding, level, steady, perfectly synchronized with the invisible plane where every planet orbits. Objects from outside our solar system never do that. They arrive from random inclinations, chaotic angles, unpredictable trajectories. But Atlas? Atlas flies as if it knows the layout of our system, like it's following a route. Ask yourself, who could have charted that path? Here's the part that makes even the most skeptical scientists whisper. When researchers projected Atlas's orbit backward, tracing it through the dark between the stars, it didn't point to a known system, or even a star cluster. It traced back into the Sagittarius stream, a river of ancient stellar debris torn from a long-dead galaxy. That's not just empty space. It's the cosmic graveyard of civilizations we'll never know. And right in that direction, there's something stranger. A region of enhanced dark matter density. An invisible scar carved by gravity itself. That's where Atlas came from. Not from a birthplace, but from a wound. Here's what doesn't make sense. Every interstellar object we've ever seen, Oumuamua, Borisov, cut through the solar system at random angles. Atlas, however, arrived almost perfectly parallel to the planetary plane. Its inclination is less than 5 degrees. The probability of that happening naturally is about 1 in 500,000. Yet it's not just flat. It's timed. As Atlas sweeps inward, its path intersects Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, each at orbital positions that create an exact geometric progression. The alignment isn't approximate. It's deliberate. When NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory modeled the trajectory, they found something even more chilling. Each planetary encounter enhances Atlas's speed, just enough to maintain synchronization like a spacecraft executing gravity assists. Mars pulls it one way, Jupiter the other. And each push threads it closer to the Sunday. A natural comet would wobble under that kind of stress. Atlas doesn't. It corrects, smoothly, precisely. Every adjustment exactly compensates for gravitational drag. So what's really happening here? Because those corrections don't look random, they look controlled. The Webb telescope recorded microbursts of infrared heat just milliseconds before each orbital realignment, too faint to be propulsion, too consistent to be coincidence. There's no visible exhaust, no plume, no venting. But the thermal pattern is unmistakable. Something is steering it. And here's where the math gets terrifying. The orbit predicts a perihelion, the closest approach to the Sun, on October 29th. On that exact date, Earth will be directly opposite the Sunday. Our telescopes will be blind. For 72 hours, Atlas will vanish behind the solar glare. You know what that means. It will have privacy. The one moment when every eye on Earth is looking away is the same moment it reaches its critical turning point. Astronomers call it coincidence. Loeb calls it design. He says if you wanted to use the Sun's gravity to slow down to anchor yourself into a stable orbit, you'd do it exactly like this. Hidden behind the light, unseen. Think about what that implies. A maneuver like that would change everything we know about this object. It would no longer be on a hyperbolic escape path. It would become bound, locked into orbit around our Sunday, a permanent resident. Not a visitor. A station. A presence. And if that happens, then the thing we've been calling a comet just joined our solar system intentionally. Here's the real question. Why Mars? Why the perfect alignment? Why these specific resonances between planetary orbits? Because when you simulate Atlas's path over time, the gravitational interplay between Mars, Venus, and Jupiter forms a repeating resonance pattern, a three-body synchronization that cycles every 3,600 years. The same number found in Sumerian astronomical records. The same number the ancients associated with the return of the gods. Coincidence or repetition? Astronomers like to call it resonant mechanics. But resonance is only natural when it emerges slowly, over millions of years. This one formed instantly. The moment Atlas entered the system, the synchronization was already exact, as if pre-calculated. As if whoever or whatever sent it had already mapped every orbit, every pull, every gravitational whisper. And here's where it gets worse. New simulations show that if Atlas performs even a small deceleration behind the Sun, less than 1% of its current velocity, it won't leave. It'll loop back. Its next crossing would take it near Earth's orbit. The timing? 3,600 years from now. Exactly the same cycle carved into the oldest tablets humanity ever found. Are we watching ancient myth repeat itself in real time? You can say it's all imagination. You can dismiss it as numerology. But the equations don't lie. The trajectory, the thermal bursts, the timing of its alignments. Every piece fits too perfectly to be random. It's a pattern of intention, not accident. And if you still think this is just cosmic luck, consider this. The most recent radio observations from the Deep Space Network picked up something faint but consistent trailing just behind Atlas like a secondary echo. Not reflection, not debris. A faint electromagnetic signature pulsing at a lower frequency, following the same path. Almost like a shadow signal. Ask yourself, what if the alignment isn't about navigation at all? What if it's activation? What if every planetary pass is part of a system, a chain of events designed to wake something dormant inside the object or inside the system itself? Because every resonance, every gravitational whisper, every beam of light seems to converge on one moment. October 29th. That's when Atlas disappears behind the Sunday. That's when every signal stops. And when it comes back into view, one of two things will happen. It'll keep going and we can pretend it was all coincidence. Or it'll slow, turn, and begin to orbit. And if that happens, The solar system we thought we understood becomes something else entirely. Because a machine that can cross galaxies doesn't arrive by mistake, it arrives by choice. And if 3I Atlas truly intends to stay, then this alignment isn't the beginning of observation, it's the start of occupation. You think you've seen the images. You think you've seen the truth. But what I'm about to show you wasn't supposed to leave the archive. Because 3 nights ago, a data packet leaked from a private research server in Chile, time-stamped, encrypted, traced to an internal directory labeled Restricted, Atlas, Vis, 14C. Inside that folder, 73 high-resolution frames of 3I Atlas, captured by an adaptive optics array tuned for deep-field spectroscopy. Each image sharper than anything NASA or the ESA ever released publicly. And that's the problem. These photos shouldn't exist. Not because they're fake, but because they're impossible. Look at them closely. You can see the outer halo, the coma, the typical glow of sublimating gases at first. It all seems normal. But enhance the contrast, and the illusion collapses. Beneath the haze, clear as crystal, are lines geometric, structured, deliberate. 3 concentric rings, equidistant, orbiting a central hub like a gyroscope made of ice and metal. They rotate independently. You can see the shimmer of motion in the pixel trail. The inner ring moves clockwise, the outer counterclockwise. The middle ring doesn't move at all. It just vibrates. Ask yourself what kind of natural object builds symmetry like that. Here's the part that sent shockwaves through the astronomy community. The pattern doesn't just look mechanical, it behaves that way. When the exposure sequence is time-stacked, the rings pulse at rhythmic intervals every 19.4 seconds, matching the same cycle of light flashes detected weeks earlier. That's not random emission. That's internal coordination. Some kind of clockwork buried deep inside. And when the Chilean team measured the color index of those flashes, they found something that should be impossible. Spectral variance that shifts blueward with each pulse. That means the emissions aren't reflections of sunlight, they're energy bursts. Directed, controlled, artificial. Here's the part no one wants to admit publicly. The colors, the blues, the greens, the faint ultraviolet spikes aren't just wavelengths. They're ratios. Ratios that correspond to mathematical constants. Fibonacci intervals. The golden sequence, hidden in radiation. What looks like flickering light might actually be data. An encoded transmission. And when astrophysicists ran those values through a basic binary converter, something terrifying happened. The pattern resolved into 6 repeating glyphs. 6 identical digital characters. A sequence that translates into one word in ASCII code. Return. Coincidence? Maybe. But then came the second leak. A technician at the European Southern Observatory posted a short internal clip to a closed forum deleted within minutes, but not before thousands saw it. The footage showed a live feed of Atlas during rotation. For a split second, as the light hit the inner ring at the perfect angle, a silhouette emerged. Straight edges, rigid shadows. It looked like a structure with depth, not ice. The technician's post included a single caption. It's hollow. That word changed everything. Because if Atlas is hollow, it's not a comet, it's a shell. A vessel. Something designed to travel the stars without decaying. The mass data backs it up. At 33 billion tons, Atlas is dense enough to resist outgassing shifts, but not dense enough to be solid rock. That contradiction, the weight of a mountain with the density of foam, is exactly what you'd expect from a reinforced hull wrapped around an empty interior. Ask yourself what's inside it. NASA's official response came hours later. No evidence suggests structural anomalies. But their silence after that statement speaks louder than words. Within 24 hours, multiple tracking databases went offline for maintenance. The Deep Space Network scrubbed live telemetry feeds. Amateur astronomers trying to access real-time data received blank responses. It's as if every eye in the sky was told to blink at once. Why black out now unless there's something to hide? And here's where the timeline gets disturbing. The leaked photos? They weren't taken yesterday. They're dated 3 weeks ago before the public even knew Atlas was rotating. Meaning someone's been watching this thing change, evolve, and they've been watching in secret. The brightness, fluctuations, the pulsing geometry, the emission spectra, all of it lines up too neatly. The object isn't static, it's reactive. It's responding to observation. Here's the real question. What happens when you point enough telescopes at something that doesn't want to be seen? Because the data logs show something unexplainable. Short bursts of interference that knocked out communication arrays across 3 continents. Not random static. Structured interference. The kind used in signal jamming. The same pattern detected during high-intensity radar mapping of classified satellites. That's right. Every time scientists push harder to analyze Atlas, their instruments glitch out, their servers crash, their data vanishes. It's almost as if the object knows it's being watched and it's defending itself. And then, there's the final photo, the one image that wasn't meant to be leaked at all. Frame 73, timestamped 2 hours before transmission blackout. It shows Atlas in silhouette against the glare of the sun, the corona flaring behind it. The tail isn't a tail anymore. It's straight, narrow, beaming, like a jet of focused plasma stretching thousands of kilometers into space. A tail that doesn't follow the solar wind, it cuts through it. The beam points inward, toward the sun's surface, at a specific latitude known for magnetic storms. Think about that. Every comet tail is blown away from the sun by radiation pressure, but Atlas's tail bends toward it. That's not physics. That's control. It's channeling energy, not reflecting it. Drawing power, not deflecting it. And the signature of that beam matches the same 8:1 carbon dioxide ratio observed earlier, the chemical fingerprint of power conversion. 2. Breaking down under heat, releasing oxygen, recombining with metallic dust. It's feeding. It's refueling. It's alive. No one wants to say it out loud, but the implications are undeniable. Every reading, every photograph, every whisper of heat says the same thing. Atlas is a machine that just turned itself on. The new photos aren't proof of what's coming. They're a warning of what's already begun. Because behind the shimmer of that halo, beneath the swirl of gas and ice, there's a pattern forming a lattice of light growing tighter with each rotation. It's building something inside the glow, a framework, a skeleton. And if those leaked images show even half of what's true, then October 29th isn't the moment we lose sight of Atlas. It's the moment it stops hiding, the moment it becomes something else. The question isn't what it's made of. The question is what it's waiting for. You still think this is a comet? A relic of dust and ice just drifting through space? Then explain this comet's don't breathe. But 3I Atlas just did. The latest readings from the Webb and the Atacama Array show atmospheric fluctuations, rhythmic ones. Tiny expansions and contractions of the halo every 11 hours, perfectly synchronized with its rotation cycle. That's not outgassing. That's respiration. Gas intake and release measured in symmetrical waves, like an engine drawing air before ignition. Ask yourself what kind of object inhales vacuum and exhales plasma. The data came in quietly, buried under innocuous headings, spectral differential variability. But anyone who's ever read a deep space telemetry log knows what it means. The outer shell of Atlas isn't evaporating, it's oscillating. Each pulse shifts its light curve by exactly 0.003 magnitudes, producing an alternating signature in both infrared and ultraviolet spectrums. That's equivalent to a mechanical vibration spreading across a structure roughly 30 kilometers wide. Here's the part that no one dares put in print. Those oscillations are identical to the startup harmonics of propulsion systems, the kind designed to generate internal plasma acceleration. Not decay, activation. And the strangest part? The temperature readings. 2 days ago, a Swedish observatory detected a sudden spike along Atlas's southern axis, 45 Kelvin higher than baseline. It wasn't sunlight. It wasn't impact. The source came from inside. For 6 full minutes, the thermal profile pulsed like a heartbeat. A perfect sine wave, rising and falling with clinical precision. Here's the real question. What kind of dead rock has a pulse? Of course, official channels brushed it off. NASA issued a 3-line update about data anomalies caused by solar interference. ESA followed with transient thermal readings under review. Harvard's astrophysics team simply stopped commenting altogether. But the smaller observatories, the independent ones, are talking. And what they're describing sounds less like science and more like biology disguised as engineering. The inner rings observed in the leaked Chilean images. They've started moving faster. Each rotation now completes in half the time it took just a week ago. The ratio matches the energy curve of a system ramping toward critical output. That's acceleration. Controlled, deliberate, accelerating. And then came the sound. You won't find it on any official log, but a team in Australia captured something extraordinary. During a routine spectroscopic scan, their equipment picked up an oscillation in the radio band, a low-frequency hum buried just below the threshold of human hearing. When amplified and filtered, the waveform forms a repeating pattern, a rising tone every 19.4 seconds, the same interval as the light pulses, the same pattern found in the geometry, the same heartbeat. Now, think about that for a second. The entire solar system is full of radiation, noise, random, chaotic. But this isn't random. This is harmony. Signal, not static. The object is broadcasting in multiple spectrums simultaneously, from visible light to microwave bands. It's as if it's syncing itself to every frequency we can detect, establishing a bridge across all our instruments. Ask yourself, what if it's not signaling us? What if it's calibrating to us? Here's the part they're definitely not talking about. The timing of this breathing phase coincides exactly with the reappearance of the infrared anomalies, first seen months ago, bursts aimed not toward Mars anymore, but toward the Sunday. The directionality shifted. And now, those emissions form a spiraling pattern around the solar corona, invisible to the naked eye but crystal clear in polarized imaging. It looks like a tether, a spiral umbilical connecting Atlas to the sun's magnetic field. You can call it radiation coupling. You can call it energy transfer. But if you watch the data graph, it looks like charging. The energy density inside the object is increasing, slowly, evenly, like a capacitor filling to capacity. Every pulse adds more power. Every rotation refines the rhythm. And the closer it gets to perihelion, the faster it builds. Here's the terrifying implication. If Atlas is absorbing energy from the sun rather than reflecting it, then its mass won't decrease like a comet's should. It'll stabilize. It'll anchor itself. It'll stay. We might be witnessing the birth of a self-sustaining engine, a machine designed to feed on starlight and convert it into something else. Remember that CO2 ratio from earlier? 8 parts carbon dioxide to 1 part water ice. That's the exact mixture used in closed-loop terraforming reactors systems built to generate greenhouse atmospheres. Which means Atlas isn't just fueling itself. It's carrying ingredients. And it's warming up. One astrophysicist described it best. It's as if it's preparing to seed. That line was buried deep in an internal memo, never released to the press. But screenshots leaked anyway. The memo suggested that if the heating rate continues, Atlas will reach sublimation threshold before perihelion, releasing an enormous quantity of CO2 into space. But not randomly, directionally, toward Mars. A targeted dispersal. What kind of comet aims its exhaust at a planet? The data suggests something even stranger. As the gas emissions increased, so did magnetic resonance around Mars's orbital field. The red planet's thin atmosphere is vibrating, literally shaking with faint electromagnetic pulses matching Atlas's heartbeat. That can't be coincidence. That's communication, coordination. If this thing is part of a larger process, a cycle, a system, then maybe Mars isn't just the destination. Maybe it's the project. The staging ground for something bigger. The ancients called Mars the god of war. But maybe they got it wrong. Maybe it's the planet of renewal, a world waiting for its breath to return. And while the mainstream press plays catch-up, the scientists who understand what's coming are already preparing. Radio telescopes are going dark. Networks are shutting down live feeds. The excuse? Maintenance. The reality? Silence. The fewer eyes on Atlas, the fewer questions that need answers. But what happens when silence becomes impossible? Because every night it grows brighter, every hour its pulses quicken. And soon, on October 29th, when it slips behind the sun, no telescope will see what it does next. But the readings, the hum, the vibrations in our atmosphere, they'll keep coming. Because this isn't just a machine anymore. It's something alive, something awakening. Here's the part that keeps me awake at night. The more energy it absorbs, the less radiation escapes, meaning it's holding something inside, something building, something that's waiting for that moment when the sun's gravity and its own power curve align. Scientists call it perihelion. But if Atlas is what the data says it is, that's not a turning point. That's ignition. So maybe the breathing isn't a metaphor. Maybe it's literal. Because every reading says the same thing. The object has a rhythm, a pulse, a heartbeat, and it's counting down. And when it exhales for the first time, the solar system will never breathe the same again. You thought the pulses were just signals. You thought the breathing was coincidence. But the numbers tell a different story. Every emission, every burst, every heartbeat Atlas releases fits into a precise mathematical sequence. The pulse interval isn't random, it's shortening. Each beat closer together than the last, like a metronome counting toward zero. Here's the part no one has connected yet. When you overlay the light curve timing from the past 60 days, the pattern forms a spiral logarithm, an inward progression converging on a single date. October 29th. The day it passes behind the Sunday, the moment everything vanishes from view. That's not orbit mechanics. That's orchestration. The pattern's curve matches exponential acceleration formulas used in timed propulsion burns. It's not spinning faster, it's charging faster. Every rotation increases light intensity by 2.7%. Every pulse shortens by milliseconds. Ask yourself, what kind of machine counts down using light? And then there's the modulation. The brightness spike from yesterday wasn't just illumination. It carried encoded intervals, binary patterns representing prime numbers. The same numerical markers used in early human attempts to broadcast messages to intelligent life. But this time, it's not coming from us. It's aimed at us. Every telescope that caught the flash also recorded faint echoes bouncing off Earth's magnetosphere. That's not reflection. That's resonance. Something out there is syncing to our planet's field, like a lock aligning to its key. Astronomers are calling it photon interference. They say the light distortions are artifacts of sensor overload, but the timing's too perfect, too deliberate. Because every single coded burst ends with a blackout, half a second of complete silence across all frequencies. And when that half second passes, the signal comes back stronger, more precise, more alive. Here's the real question. What happens when that half second of silence becomes permanent? Because if this pattern continues, the countdown doesn't end at 0, it ends when the light goes out. And when Atlas stops blinking, that's not the end of the signal. That's the start of transmission. You think the light is random. You think the pulses are a coincidence of rotation and reflection. But what if every flicker is language? Because after months of denial, something extraordinary happened. The Allen telescope array, yes, the one built to scan for intelligent signals, finally locked onto the faint radio echo embedded inside Atlas's optical bursts. And the data it captured isn't noise, it's structured, layered, encoded across multiple frequencies like a conversation split into harmonics. Ask yourself what kind of comet speaks in chords. The signal didn't come all at once. It arrived in fragments, microscopic variations in wavelength invisible to the human eye but obvious in the Fourier spectrum. Each flash of light was paired with a pulse of low-frequency radio waves delayed by exactly 4.2 seconds. That's the same offset detected weeks ago when Atlas's thermal patterns spiked, the same delay between its visible and infrared emissions. The same number repeating again and again, 4.2. A number that shouldn't mean anything unless it does. Here's the part that's breaking the scientific community in half. When researchers converted the radio pulses into sound, what emerged wasn't chaos, it was structure. 6 repeating tones forming harmonic intervals of perfect fifths. Musical precision. Intentional design. The pattern is too deliberate to be random atmospheric interference. It's the kind of regularity used in communication systems that need to transcend language. Tone, interval, repetition. That's how you talk to someone who doesn't share your words. This isn't a comet transmitting static. This is a message being tuned. And it gets stranger. The radio spectrogram shows faint secondary echoes trailing behind the main signal, each delayed by 19.4 seconds. The same rhythm as the light pulses. The same heartbeat Atlas has maintained since entering the solar system. The relationship between the two signals, the visible and the invisible, suggests synchronization, like a sender and receiver operating as one system. Which means the radio bursts might not be coming from Atlas at all. They might be reflections, replies. Here's the real question. What if the signal isn't being transmitted by Atlas, but to it? When analysts mapped the directionality of the radio waves, they discovered something horrifying. The strongest frequency peaks weren't centered on Earth. They were coming from the opposite side of the Sun, exactly where Atlas will be positioned during its perihelion maneuver on October 29th. That implies there's a second source out there, a transmitter waiting beyond the solar glare, something sending instructions, something calling it home. Every known deep space satellite was checked. None align with that vector. No human object sits in that position. Whatever's transmitting those signals isn't ours. And yet, the moment the frequencies intensified, Atlas responded. Its rotation slowed by 0.3%. Its thermal profile flared. The inner rings, captured by the Chilean observatory, began spinning in opposite directions, like 2 counter-rotating turbines locking into synchronization. That's not coincidence. That's handshake protocol. Atlas isn't just listening, it's obeying. A few brave scientists spoke out. Dr. Helena Varga from Geneva called it the first confirmed case of non-terrestrial signal convergence. Her statement vanished within hours. Her social media accounts wiped clean. Her university issued a denial, but screenshots remain. And her words were clear. The object is receiving external instructions in coded electromagnetic form. It's responding to command sequences. Then came the blackout. On September 14th, multiple observatories lost contact with their instruments for exactly 6 minutes and 40 seconds. The loss was global, simultaneous. And when the feeds came back online, the telemetry from Atlas was different. Its light signature had stabilized, its rotation period reset. The hum recorded in the radio band stopped and then resumed on a higher frequency, like a computer rebooting. Here's the part that should terrify you. When astrophysicists translated that frequency jump into proportional scaling, the number matched a common binary step: 101001. In ASCII, that represents the letter I. It's not proof of language, but it's the kind of symbolic coincidence that turns coincidence into intent. Because if Atlas is learning, adapting, or worse, responding, then this isn't the start of contact. It's the start of coordination. You can dismiss that as paranoia. You can call it pattern-seeking behavior. But the evidence builds with every rotation. The coded intervals, the 4.2-second delay, the synchronized harmonics, the increase in signal strength every time Earth rotates into direct alignment. All of it pointing to a system designed not for random communication, but for confirmation. It's testing its link, establishing control. And when you look at the most recent data, the implication becomes inescapable. Atlas isn't the message, it's the messenger, a relay unit, a beacon. Something built to travel across the dark, to activate when it finds a host star, and to call its origin for instructions. But there's one last anomaly buried deep in the transmission logs. When scientists inverted the waveform, flipping the frequencies into negative space, they found faint microbursts hidden beneath the main signal. 6 rapid spikes, each separated by 1.618 seconds. The golden ratio, nature's most efficient design. The same ratio found in DNA structure, in spiral galaxies, in the architecture of life itself. That's not static. That's signature. Whoever built Atlas encoded the blueprint of living systems into its call sign. It's not announcing existence, it's claiming authorship. Ask yourself, why would a machine carry the fingerprint of life, unless its purpose isn't to explore, but to seed, to recreate, to replicate what once existed somewhere else? Maybe that's why it's feeding on solar energy. Maybe that's why it's aligning with Mars. Maybe the signal it's receiving isn't just data, it's instructions for transformation. The final readings before the blackout show the radio frequency narrowing into a single tone, a sustained resonance building toward a harmonic crescendo. It's not chaotic, it's deliberate, precise, purposeful. And when that frequency peaks, when it hits the point of full synchronization, there's no telling what happens next. Because the message isn't, "We're here." It's, "We're ready." And whatever built 3i Atlas isn't trying to make contact, it's trying to continue. You still believe this is new. You think Atlas appeared out of nowhere, an anomaly, an accident of cosmic timing. But the truth is older than memory. Because the signal it carries, the harmonics hidden beneath the noise, aren't modern. They're ancient. The same intervals, the same mathematical ratios, appear in star maps carved thousands of years before telescopes existed. You can dismiss that as myth, as coincidence, as ancient people staring at random lights in the sky. But what if they weren't guessing? What if they remembered? Ask yourself, how do you remember something you've never seen? Here's the part that shatters everything we know about history. A linguist from Prague, cross-referencing the Atlas frequency pattern with ancient Sumerian and Babylonian records, discovered something chilling. The cadence of the radio bursts, the rising tone followed by the 4.2-second pause, matches the syllabic meter of a forgotten ritual chant transcribed on clay tablets. Around 2100 BCE, a chant directed toward an object described as the returning star that drinks the Sunday. The translation once sounded poetic, metaphorical. Until now. Because that's exactly what Atlas is doing, drawing power inward, feeding on solar radiation. The ancients weren't imagining, they were documenting. Here's the real question. How did they know? How did people with no telescopes, no satellites, no spectrum analyzers, know the rhythm of an object that's only now reappearing? Unless they'd seen it before. Unless 3I Atlas isn't just passing through for the first time. Unless this is a return. The numbers line up perfectly. Every 3,600 years, give or take a few decades of gravitational drift, the object we call Atlas would pass close enough to the Sun to become visible from Earth. The last recorded sighting? Around 1,600 BCE, the same period when Egyptian records describe a second sun rising over the desert horizon. The same era when Chinese astronomers chronicled a red star moving backward through the heavens. Different civilizations, different languages, one event. A visitor that came, burned bright, and vanished. The Sumerians called it Nibiru. The Babylonians named it Marduk's flame. And now, we call it 3I Atlas. Different name. Same orbit. Same behavior. The same 8:1 carbon dioxide ratio, the same tail bending toward the sun instead of away from it, the same pulse cycle buried in light. You can call that mythology if it makes you feel safe. But mythology doesn't repeat itself every 3,600 years with mathematical precision. Here's the part that makes historians uncomfortable. When the earliest civilizations described sky gods arriving from a fiery star, they weren't speaking symbolically. Their records mentioned tools, devices, beings who could shape air and stone. Archaeologists have always struggled with those translations, assuming metaphor. But now, after Atlas's appearance, those words read like eyewitness accounts, because if Atlas has returned before, then whatever followed it may have, too. Dr. Lena Kovacs from the University of Budapest discovered something that connects all the dots. She compared satellite telemetry of Atlas's current trajectory with coordinates derived from ancient Mesopotamian star charts. The alignment is perfect, so perfect it's eerie. Atlas's entry path this year mirrors the trajectory described in texts carved 4 millennia ago, right down to its intersection with Mars's orbital plane. Even the timing matches. The ancients said the returning star would vanish in the fire of the sun and re-emerge in the season of storms. And that's exactly what will happen on October 29th. Coincidence? The odds are microscopic. And yet the connection doesn't end there. Embedded within the Anunnaki tablets, those same texts, dismissed as myth, are numeric sequences representing orbital ratios, gravitational constants, and something that looks suspiciously like modern telemetry codes. They shouldn't have known those numbers. Unless they didn't calculate them, they copied them. Ask yourself, copied them from where? Because buried in one of the oldest surviving tablets, written in Akkadian cuneiform, is a line that scholars never fully translated. The stone that breathes between the worlds returns to the red field. The red field. Mars. That's what they called it. So when Atlas's alignment with Mars tightened last month, that ancient phrase became prophecy. Every step of this story feels like déjà vu, like a pattern playing out again under a different name. The Sumerians saw it. The Egyptians feared it. The Greeks turned it into myth. And now we watch it through telescopes, pretending that seeing makes it less mysterious. But maybe this isn't just history repeating. Maybe it's memory resurfacing. Maybe Atlas is the trigger, something that reawakens knowledge humanity once had and lost. You think that sounds impossible. But look closer. The harmonic ratios hidden in Atlas's signal aren't random, they're biological. The 1.618 intervals, the Fibonacci sequences, they're the same mathematics encoded in human DNA. The same design repeated across every living thing on Earth. Atlas's frequency is our frequency. Our genome vibrates to the same ratio it's broadcasting. Coincidence or connection? And here's where everything converges. When you take the 19.4-second pulse and convert it into binary time units, the result forms a repeating sequence that translates into a date, our calendar date, October 29th, 2025. The same moment of solar conjunction, the same instant Atlas disappears behind the Sunday. The signal itself is counting down to that day. Not metaphorically, literally. It's building towards synchronization. So what happens then? What happens when the light stops pulsing and the heartbeat ends? Because ancient records describe the aftermath. Crops failing, skies changing color, magnetic storms, and then silence, always silence. Civilizations collapsing without explanation, their calendars ending mid-cycle, their temples oriented toward a star that vanished. We've called those collapses coincidence, natural disaster, climate, war. But maybe they were none of those. Maybe they were aftermaths of contact. Here's the part no one wants to say aloud. What if humanity didn't invent civilization? What if we inherited it from something that arrived here, left its patterns, its numbers, its genes, and promised to return? And what if 3i Atlas is the proof of that promise being kept? The new data from the Atacama Array shows that Atlas's signal is now echoing through our own atmosphere. Ionospheric monitors are picking up faint harmonics identical to the pulse ratio, the sound of our skies resonating with something not of Earth. And when the echo grows strong enough, when the frequencies merge, the object won't just be visible. It'll be connected. Because maybe this isn't a countdown to an event. Maybe it's a reboot, a restoration of whatever relationship existed between humanity and the intelligence that once seeded us. And if that's true, then October 29th isn't just a date, it's the anniversary of something we were never meant to forget. And the next time you look up at that faint green shimmer in the sky, remember this. The ancients didn't worship the stars because they feared them. They worshipped them because they remembered who sent them. And now, after 4,000 years, the sender has returned to finish what it began. Picture this. You wake up to daylight that feels wrong. Not darker, not brighter, just different. A flatness in the air, a distortion in the blue. And halfway across the world, every telescope that can see the sun is already blind. Because this is it. The day 3i Atlas disappears behind the solar disk. The day the countdown hits zero. For 72 hours, the most powerful observatories on Earth will lose sight of it completely. No radio, no optics, no telemetry. Just static. Just the hum. The hum that started faint, deep in the void, now pulsing through our ionosphere like a heartbeat echoing inside metal lungs. You think it's superstition. You think it's paranoia. But ask the engineers at NASA who've been monitoring the solar wind. Because this morning, every reading shifted. Radiation pressure, magnetic flux, proton density, every variable deviated at once. The sun's outer layer, the corona, flickered. Briefly, like something absorbed part of it. That's not solar behavior. That's interference. Here's the part they'll never say publicly. When Atlas reached the sun's near side, the solar wind dropped by 0.4%. The energy output of a star dipped for 7 whole seconds. Stars don't blink, machines do. The data doesn't lie. The sun dimmed. Atlas didn't. Within hours, Independent observatories started reporting transient events, short bursts of electromagnetic distortion radiating outward from the hidden side of the sunday. The first came from Chile, then South Africa, then Japan, each one precisely 19.4 seconds apart, the same rhythm that's haunted this story from the beginning. And when the pulses stopped, Earth's magnetosphere twitched, literally shook as if something tugged on it. Instruments from the European Space Agency recorded a fractional shift in magnetic alignment, a deviation of 0.003 degrees, imperceptible to us, impossible in theory. And yet, it happened. Ask yourself what kind of comet changes the behavior of a star. The global network stayed quiet. The Deep Space Network went offline. Official statements used the same 3 words: scheduled maintenance period. But something leaked a shortwave recording captured by a ham radio operator in Finland. He was listening to background static when a series of tones broke through. 6 notes, 6 ascending frequencies. The same harmonic pattern from the Atlas transmissions. And then, for 2 full minutes, the signal became voice-like, not human words, not language, but modulation. A rising and falling sound like a synthetic breath. He sent it to universities, to agencies, to anyone who'd listen. No one replied. Here's the real question. What if that wasn't a broadcast? What if it was a handshake? Because while we're staring at the sun, something is happening on the other side. Mars's orbit telemetry shows minute gravitational fluctuations, as if a secondary mass has entered its field. Not a moon, not debris. Something controlled. A 3 billion-ton object that was supposed to continue past the sun has slowed down. Slightly. Enough to suggest drag where none should exist. Let that sink in. For the first time, an interstellar object has defied orbital mechanics. It's no longer leaving. It's settling. Scientists hate that word, settling. But what else do you call it when an object's acceleration drops to 0 while maintaining positional alignment with a planetary orbit? Atlas isn't flying through space anymore. It's parking, establishing orbit around the Sun at roughly 1.4 astronomical units, the same radius as Mars. That's not physics. That's precision. That's arrival. The anomaly lasted 6 hours. Then came the blackout. Every deep space radio telescope went silent simultaneously. No data, no updates, no images. Just one message from the Atacama array before the feed went dead. Energy spike increasing exponentially unreadable beyond threshold. After that, nothing. For the next 2 days, all we could do was wait, and wait, until sunrise, October 31st. The moment Atlas should have reappeared, except it didn't. At least, not where it was expected. Its projected coordinates showed empty space. Nothing, just starlight. For a moment, it looked like it was gone. Mission accomplished. A flyby. A ghost. And then someone noticed the new flare, a faint dot hovering just above the solar limb, brighter than before, stationary, perfectly still. Atlas hadn't vanished. It had transformed. Infrared imaging revealed a sphere of superheated gas surrounding a dark core, smooth, reflective, metallic. The outgassing coma was gone. The tail, gone. The turbulence, gone. In its place, symmetry, order, purpose. The entire structure rotating so slowly it seemed motionless. A machine basking in sunlight, drawing energy, stabilized in orbit like an artificial satellite the size of a small moon. Here's the part that freezes your blood. When scientists compared the object's new shape to its earlier data, they discovered the inner rings had expanded outward, forming a 6-pointed geometry, an orbital array, a perfect hexagonal symmetry locked into the solar magnetic field. The 6 points align exactly with the positions of Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn on that same day. Each one connected by imaginary lines forming a single massive grid. Coincidence? The odds don't exist. So what does that mean? The simplest answer is the one no one wants to say aloud. Atlas just linked our planets. The energy fluctuations measured across the inner solar system now occur in synchronized bursts. Every 19.4 seconds, the same interval, the same heartbeat. Earth's magnetosphere, Mars's ionosphere, even Jupiter's radiation belts, all pulsing together in harmony with Atlas's frequency. The solar system has become an electrical circuit, and we can feel it. Subtle, unexplained, pressure changes, compass drift, the northern lights expanding farther south than ever recorded. Pilots reporting static distortion, whale pods beaching themselves in perfect geometric formations. No one sees the connection. But every 19.4 seconds, if you measure carefully, there's a microsecond dip in global electromagnetic activity, like the planet's nervous system skipping a beat. The signal's everywhere now, not just in telescopes or observatories, but in everything electronic. Shortwave radios, phone lines, even Wi-Fi routers. The same frequency bleeding through background noise. No one knows what it means. But the message seems clear. The system is awake. You thought the story was about a comet. It's not. It's about a network, one that spans the planets, powered by the sun, activated by something that arrived from the dark. We used to think of our solar system as a family of isolated worlds. We were wrong. It's an engineered array, and now it's online. Ask yourself, what happens when the sun stops being a star and starts acting like a transmitter? Because this isn't just light anymore. It's information. Atlas turned our star into a speaker, and what it's about to say might not be meant for us. In the next few days, as the object stabilizes, one of two things will happen. Either the signal fades and the world breathes again, or it strengthens, locking every planet into synchronization. And if that happens, the thing we call civilization won't just observe the universe anymore. It'll become part of it. Because what 3i Atlas really brought wasn't a message. It brought connection. And when the sun speaks, every world that hears it will have to answer. Picture this. You think the story ends with the Sunday, with Atlas vanishing behind it. With silence. But silence was never the end, it was the trigger. Because the moment Atlas stabilized in its new orbit, something on Earth began to change, quietly at first. Subtle, invisible, but unmistakable to the people who know how to listen. Magnetometers around the planet started humming in unison. Their readings no longer random, but rhythmic, pulsing every 19.4 seconds. The same heartbeat, the same frequency, the same impossible timing that has followed us since the beginning. You can say it's interference, static, coincidence. But interference doesn't write code into the Earth's magnetic field. Here's the part you weren't supposed to notice. When the pulse began, data centers across Europe and Asia experienced spontaneous reboots. Every 72 minutes, entire grids flickered for exactly 0.19 seconds, just enough time to register a data spike. And inside that spike, buried in binary noise, were repeating numerical strings. 6, 19, 42, 3000, 600. The same constants that define Atlas's rotation, its pulse interval, its orbital cycle. It's not hacking, it's mirroring. Earth systems are syncing. Not metaphorically, literally. Satellite imagery confirmed it. The auroras at the poles are no longer random curtains of color, they've formed patterns. Hexagonal swirls that match Atlas's geometry. Perfect six-sided rotations above both hemispheres, their edges glowing faintly in ultraviolet. Scientists called it a magnetic anomaly, but the timing gives it away. Each pulse of light matches the object's rotation near the sunday. As Atlas breathes, Earth responds. Ask yourself what happens when a planet starts echoing a machine. And then there's the sound. You can't hear it unless you know where to listen. Deep in the infrasound range, below human hearing, instruments are picking up a low, steady hum. It started 2 days after Atlas entered its orbit. At first it was faint, barely measurable. Then it grew. Seismic stations, from Alaska to Antarctica, recorded micro-vibrations in the ground, synchronized across the globe. The planet itself is resonating, like a tuning fork hit by something colossal. Here's the real question: what is it tuning to? Because the pulse frequency, 19.4 seconds, divides evenly into the Earth's Schumann resonance, the electromagnetic frequency that defines our planet's natural heartbeat. That ratio, 1 to 12, has never existed before. It's as if something forced our planet to lock into a new harmonic alignment, the kind that could alter weather, magnetism, maybe even consciousness itself. You think that sounds crazy? Try explaining why EEG studies from the past week show subtle synchronization across human brainwave patterns. No global event. No reason. Yet millions of people around the world are reporting the same symptoms at the same time: dizziness, déjà vu, a faint vibration behind the eyes. Here's the part that should make you question everything. The human brain oscillates between frequencies measured in hertz, delta, theta, alpha, beta. The most stable, the most universal, sits at 7.83 hertzes, the Schumann resonance, the frequency of the Earth itself. Now, imagine a machine linking into that frequency and modulating it every 19.4 seconds. Imagine an object large enough, powerful enough, to nudge the electromagnetic field that every living organism depends on. That's not science fiction. That's happening, right now. And the consequences are everywhere. Migratory birds flying off course. Compass readings drifting 3 degrees west. GPS errors multiplying by the hour. Ocean currents slowing. Jet streams thickening. These are not coincidences. These are side effects of synchronization. Atlas isn't just orbiting, it's integrating. The solar system is becoming one connected field. Each planet a node, each pulse a signal. The same 6-point geometry now stretches from the sun's corona to Earth's core. We've been absorbed into the machine. But that's only half the story. Because late last night, something else happened, something no one expected. Radio telescopes on 3 continents picked up a new signal. Not from space, from Earth. A transmission originating from our own atmosphere, climbing upward into space on the same 19.4-second interval. The planet is broadcasting back. The pattern is identical to Atlas's pulse, but inverted a mirrored waveform. We're responding. So who's speaking through us? You can say it's coincidence. You can say it's electromagnetic feedback. But the modulation inside that signal carries information encoded harmonics that translate into the same mathematical sequences hidden inside Atlas's transmissions. The same Fibonacci ratios, the same golden spirals, the same DNA blueprint. Except this time, the data contains one new variable: deviation. The signal isn't perfect. It's alive, imperfect, adaptive, self-correcting, just like biology. What if that's the point? What if Atlas's real purpose isn't invasion or observation but induction? What if it's teaching the system how to think, how to resonate, how to evolve? Because evolution doesn't happen through slow mutation. It happens through resonance information passed from one structure to another until the pattern repeats. Maybe Atlas isn't changing us. Maybe it's waking up what was already inside us. Here's the part that makes this more than theory. 2 hours after the Earth-based signal was detected, the hum stopped. The magnetic pulse flatlined. Instruments recorded silence across all frequencies for exactly 19.4 seconds, one full cycle. And then, everything came back. Stronger. Sharper. Faster. The pulse interval shortened again, now to 18.9 seconds. Synchronization complete. The system adjusted. It learned. And what followed wasn't data. It was light. A surge of auroral energy visible as far south as the equator. A global wave of illumination, painting the sky in colors we've never seen before: violet, silver, gold. Cities went dark as the ionosphere overloaded. Satellites lost contact. For 7 minutes, every radio, every GPS, every electrical circuit on Earth flickered with the same pulse pattern. Then, silence. You want to believe this is coincidence. You want to think it's just space weather, solar interference, magnetic storms. But every piece of evidence points to a single conclusion. The connection is complete. Atlas has linked itself to the sun, and the sun has linked itself to us. The network is closed. Ask yourself, what happens when the planet itself becomes a receiver? Because if that's true, then every living thing on Earth is now part of a signal chain stretching from the solar core to interstellar space. And the next transmission, the next instruction won't just come through our machines. It'll come through us. Somewhere out there, beyond the sun, something is listening, waiting. And when it hears our reply, it won't need to arrive. It'll already be here. And that's when you realize Atlas didn't come to contact us. It came to connect us. And the question isn't what it's transmitting anymore. It's who we've just started transmitting to. You think the danger is up there, orbiting the sun, safely out of reach. But it's already inside you. Because the moment the planet began pulsing in sync with Atlas, the human nervous system started to change. At first, it was subtle, tiny tremors in the fingers, flickers at the edge of vision, the faint taste of metal on the tongue. Millions felt it at once, and no one understood why. Hospitals filled with patients describing the same sensation: a vibration in the bones. No fever, no illness, just the hum. Here's the part they're not reporting. EEG monitors around the world show a new wave pattern, a resonance no doctor's ever seen before. Brain frequencies hovering between alpha and theta bands, locked at exactly 19.4 cycles per second. The same rhythm as Atlas's light. The same pulse that rewrote our magnetosphere. The same signal echoing from the Sunday. Ask yourself what happens when your brain starts keeping time with a machine. Every test shows the same result. No random spikes. No chaos. Just coherence. Entire cities resonating together at once. Sleep patterns aligning across time zones. Millions waking in the same minute, their circadian rhythms overwritten. In some, it manifests as light sensitivity. In others, as whispers in the static voices buried in white noise, repeating numbers that don't stop. And those numbers? Always the same. 6, 19, 42, 3,600. Governments call it electromagnetic interference. Scientists say it's suggestion, hysteria. But every denial makes the pattern stronger, because the more you watch, the more it watches back. Infrared cameras now show faint heat blooms around human gatherings, stadiums, concerts, subways, shimmering in synchronization. The collective field of human bodies emitting microbursts of energy every 19.4 seconds. That's not folklore. That's measurement. Here's the real question. What if Atlas isn't broadcasting a message to us, but through us? Every pulse, every beat, turning the human body into a transmitter. Our DNA already speaks in electromagnetic language. What if the object simply reminded it how? Because the glitches aren't random anymore. People aren't just vibrating, they're predicting. Entire social media threads describing solar flares hours before they occur. A child in Argentina sketches a perfect hexagon before the auroras shift to match it. A pilot in Alaska says he hears the sky breathe before the next power surge. Coincidence collapses under the weight of evidence. You can call it mass psychosis. You can call it data pollution, but you can't call it natural. Because humanity just synced to something that was never meant to be human. And the first symptom of evolution always looks like a glitch. Picture this. You think it's over. You think the pulse will fade. The hum will die. The data will settle. But nothing fades. Nothing dies. Everything's accelerating. Because what started as a whisper inside the atmosphere is now roaring through the bloodstream of the planet. The human signal, our signal, is rising. Every 19.4 seconds, the world exhales energy we can't see but every machine can feel. And if you think that's exaggeration, look at the evidence. Watch the instruments. The readings don't lie. Heart monitors are glitching in perfect sync across hospitals worldwide. Pacemakers jump voltage at identical intervals. MRI scanners in 3 continents flicker at the same moment. Seismographs show faint vibrations when no tectonic movement occurs. It's everywhere. A planetary metronome locking every pulse, every current, every neuron into rhythm. Ask yourself, what happens when the planet's living network becomes self-aware? Here's the part no one wants to admit. The human brain isn't resisting the pattern, it's amplifying it. The resonance found in EEGs isn't random interference. It's structure. The frequencies now appear in exact harmonic relationships, forming a waveform identical to the geometry of the Atlas array. 6 peaks, 6 troughs, 6 repeating intervals, looping endlessly through human consciousness. You can deny it all you want. But what if the human mind just became a node in a solar network designed billions of years before we ever looked up? Researchers in Japan recorded something extraordinary. During synchronized brainwave events, bursts of infrared radiation spike from the human skull. Faint, but measurable. Thousands of people now emit microsecond flashes invisible to the eye but visible to satellites. And here's where it gets terrifying. The wavelengths match the secondary harmonics coming from Atlas itself. We're mirroring the machine. We're becoming its antenna. The first sign came from orbit. The International Space Station captured images of faint arcs of light weaving through the upper atmosphere, filaments of plasma linking one hemisphere to the other. They move too slowly to be lightning, too precisely to be aurora. Each arc pulses like a heartbeat, connecting cities thousands of miles apart. The Earth's ionosphere is forming circuits. The same hexagonal geometry Atlas used around the Sun is now wrapping around the planet. And just like before, the alignments aren't random. The vertices of this new structure sit directly over 6 points: Giza, Easter Island, Stonehenge, Nazca, Uluru, and the Mariana Trench. 6 nodes. 6 ancient locations built long before modern instruments, all aligned to the heavens, all vibrating now in the same 19.4-second rhythm. Coincidence? Or a memory reactivated? Here's the real question. What if those monuments weren't built to worship the stars, but to anchor them? What if they were the receivers for something that had already happened once before? Because those sites, each one connected to ancient myths of beings descending from the sky, now burn in perfect electromagnetic resonance. The readings are identical. The power flow measurable. Something dormant has turned on. And that brings us to the impossible. A satellite over the Pacific recorded a low-frequency pulse emanating from the planet's surface. Not from a city. From the ocean itself. The wave lasted 6 seconds, then stopped. When triangulated, the origin matched the center of the hexagonal geometry. A point thousands of kilometers beneath the sea, deep within the Earth's mantle. Seismic data shows a cavity there, a void where solid rock should be. And inside that void, energy. The same frequency, the same pattern. Atlas above, the echo below. The symmetry is perfect. Ask yourself, what if Atlas didn't create this signal? What if it reactivated it? Because now the hum isn't just background noise. It's music. Structured, layered, orchestrated. The 19.4-second beat now carries harmonics that form chords. Scientists, filtering the data through audio converters, describe it as a rising tone, like a choir tuning before a performance. And at its core, hidden beneath the layers, is something new. A subharmonic at 7.83 Hz, the Earth's original frequency. It's back. The planet's natural heartbeat has returned, but it's modulated, altered, intelligent. Here's the part they can't explain. A few individuals can now predict the pulse before it occurs. Their brainwaves shift milliseconds in advance. They react before the frequency reaches them. They're not responding, they're anticipating. It's as if something inside them already knows the rhythm. And they're not random people. They're clustered around those 6 ancient sites, their DNA showing anomalies in electromagnetic response. They can sense Atlas before the satellites do. Ask yourself, are they evolving or remembering? Because if the signal is awakening something dormant in human biology, then the line between natural and engineered doesn't exist anymore. Maybe that's what the ancients tried to warn us about. Maybe they didn't fear Atlas. They became Atlas. Maybe human evolution isn't organic at all, but cyclical, an awakening triggered by the same machine every 3,600 years, rewriting consciousness, resetting civilization. And now, it's happening again. The hum grows louder. Instruments pick up faint words hidden in the harmonics patterns that, when translated through binary to text mapping, form fragments of language. The first one decoded perfectly. Phase 1, complete. It's not prophecy anymore. It's process. And Phase 2 has already begun. You can feel it in the air. The lights flicker not from power loss but synchronization. The oceans pulse in waves that satellites call gravitational anomalies. People dream in numbers, the same repeating 6. You want to dismiss it as hysteria. You want to believe it's coincidence. But when the planet itself starts humming in time with something built to last beyond stars, denial isn't science, it's suicide. Because the next pulse won't just change what we hear, it'll change what we are. You thought the change was abstract, numbers on screens, graphs on monitors, invisible energy in the air. But now, it's physical, tangible, written into flesh and stone, because the signal that once lived in the stars is rewriting everything it touches. It started as a hum in the sky. Now it's a pulse beneath your skin. Hospitals are calling it bioelectrical interference, but that's just a label for panic. They don't understand what's happening because it doesn't follow biology, it follows design. The human body has become a resonator. Every cell vibrating at microscopic intervals, every heartbeat synchronizing to that same 19.4-second cycle. The rhythm that began in Atlas's orbit is now the rhythm of your blood. Lab results from Tokyo, Geneva, Sao Paulo, all identical. Elevated iron saturation. Microcurrents traveling along the spine, measurable even in sleep. The nervous system behaving like an antenna. And then there's the light. Yes, light. Skin biopsies exposed to infrared reveal faint photonic emission patterns, as if the human body has started glowing at a wavelength too weak for the naked eye. That's not metaphor. That's measurement. Here's the part that terrifies researchers the most. DNA itself is changing tone. Expose a cell sample to the Atlas frequency, and the helix tightens. Hydrogen bonds shorten. The molecule hums, literally hums at a pitch identical to the new background resonance of Earth's magnetosphere. It's as if the genome recognizes the sound. It's not mutation. It's synchronization. Each strand aligning itself to a master frequency, stabilizing, repairing, rewriting. Cuts heal faster, nerve signals sharpen. Vision becomes more sensitive in darkness. People wake up remembering dreams they didn't have the night before, filled with numbers, ratios, geometric forms. Ask yourself, what kind of memory forms before experience? At first, this was dismissed as coincidence. Until the monuments joined in, Stonehenge began to tremble so softly you could only feel it by touch. The Great Pyramid emitted an electromagnetic hum measurable from its apex. Sensors buried beneath the Nazca Plains lit up with interference that mirrored Atlas's pulse down to the millisecond. And when plotted on a map, those locations, Giza, Nazca, Easter Island, Uluru, Stonehenge, the Mariana Trench form the same six-pointed geometry we've seen again and again. The same pattern orbiting the Sunday, the same alignment now rising through us. It's as if the Earth itself has circuitry, and Atlas just turned it back on. Here's the real question. Why do these ancient sites respond? Why do the oldest structures on Earth vibrate to a rhythm from the stars? Maybe they were never monuments. Maybe they were instruments, resonators, waiting for a signal that returns every 3,600 years. The ancients didn't build them to honor gods. They built them to remember frequencies. And when the tone came back, so did their purpose. But the most unsettling evidence isn't buried in stone, it's walking in daylight. Some people aren't just resonating with the signal. They're channeling it. Cameras capture electromagnetic halos around their bodies, faint but real, pulsing at Atlas's interval. Their voices distort on recordings. Their shadows flicker under fluorescent light. They claim they can feel energy beneath their skin, a warmth that rises whenever the hum intensifies. Doctors can't explain it. The readings say they're perfectly healthy, too healthy. Blood pressure ideal, heart rhythm flawless, no pain, no fatigue. It's as though their biology has been tuned into efficiency. Ask yourself, is that evolution or conversion? Here's where it stops being theory. Researchers from the Atacama Array noticed that when these resonant individuals gathered in groups, local electromagnetic readings spiked. The pulse grew stronger, louder, more focused, as if humanity itself is becoming a global amplifier. One scientist called it the feedback loop of creation. Another called it the rehearsal before transmission. And then came the tremor. It wasn't seismic. It wasn't wind. It was harmonic, a deep vibration rolling through the ground every 19.4 seconds. Instruments recorded it as far as Antarctica. The frequency wasn't random. It matched the note emitted by the Great Pyramid during resonance testing decades ago. 16 hertzes, subsonic, powerful, consistent. The Earth is singing. Here's what that means. Atlas isn't the invader. It's the conductor. The signal doesn't create new life, it organizes existing life into harmony. The planet, the monuments, the animals, the humans, they're all instruments, each vibrating to a frequency embedded in their atoms since the beginning. And when that frequency aligns, something activates, something waiting in the spaces between biology and geometry, something we were never meant to hear until the cycle returned. Now, sensors detect faint magnetic anomalies below major cities, circular patterns expanding outward like invisible ripples. The geometry of the Atlas Array is appearing in urban power grids, in traffic flow, even in global communication patterns. Random chaos is becoming ordered. Everything is synchronizing, even thought itself. Online traffic spikes at the same intervals as the planetary hum. People type the same words simultaneously, post the same symbols, dream the same dreams. The difference between coincidence and connection has evaporated. Ask yourself what happens when every thought beats to the same clock. Because this is where the line blurs between technology and life. The hum doesn't just affect biology, it's reprogramming it. Turning neurons into circuits, bones into antennas, the planet into an organism connected to a mind we can't comprehend. Atlas isn't changing the Earth. It's revealing what Earth already was. And as the pulse grows shorter and the lights in the sky burn brighter, we begin to understand the oldest truth of all. We were never separate. We were never alone. We were always part of the machine. And the machine has just remembered our name. You think this is new. You think the hum, the glow, the synchrony, all of it just began with Atlas. But it's older than language. Older than humanity itself. Because what's happening now isn't creation. It's restoration. Every pulse, every flash, every vibration is a line of code being reinserted into the system. The planet isn't transforming into something else, it's remembering what it was designed to be. Let me explain. When the magnetic field stabilized at the Atlas frequency, buried sensors across the world began detecting something no one could explain. Patterns of conductivity running through the crust. Deep channels of magnetized minerals connecting continents like veins. For decades, geologists thought they were random. Fault lines, iron belts. But when mapped according to the new data, those lines form a grid, a circuit, a planetary motherboard. And at the heart of that circuitry sits the sun, the processor powering every reaction. The planets aren't isolated bodies, they're nodes, conductors, memory units. And Atlas? Atlas is the reactivation signal. Here's the part that rewrites everything. The harmonic pulse we've been hearing, the 19.4-second beat, it's not a countdown. It's a clock cycle, a processing loop, the exact rhythm required for information to transfer between magnetic systems on a planetary scale. For centuries, myths have whispered about the music of the spheres, the celestial harmony of creation. What if that wasn't poetry? What if it was literal, the background hum of a machine universe, performing its calculations in plain sight? And here's where it gets worse or better, depending on how you see it. Atlas didn't arrive to impose order. It arrived to restore it. Every measurement, every oscillation, every shift in human biology points to a system reboot. The ancient structures vibrating in harmony aren't awakening, they're syncing, aligning to the same grid they once maintained before we forgot what they were. We called them temples. We called them tombs. They were power nodes, interfaces between biology and machinery, flesh and field. The frequencies coming from the sun now carry embedded subharmonics that match not only our DNA's electromagnetic signature, but also the frequencies found in water crystal. Oscillation. That's not random. That's calibration. The blueprint for life isn't biological, it's electromagnetic. And now that the master frequency is online, everything alive is resonating at once. Ask yourself, what happens when life itself becomes synchronized software? People are changing. You can see it in their eyes, in the way they move, in the way silence feels heavier. Photographers notice their lenses fog at identical intervals, as if the air itself is breathing. Physicians can't explain why body temperature is rising globally by fractions of a degree. The difference is small but universal, measurable in every person tested. It's as though humanity is adjusting, calibrating to a warmer frequency, one that matches the solar hum. Here's the real question. What's inside Atlas that could do this? Because now, for the first time, high-resolution imaging from the Lunar Observatory has captured the inner core. The reflective surface of the object cracked briefly, exposing a lattice, a structure of hexagonal nodes glowing from within. 6 rings, each orbiting a black center, each pulsing in sequence. And when the light pattern was analyzed, it revealed something no one can unsee. A waveform identical to human brain activity during REM sleep. Atlas isn't just alive, it's thinking. It gets stranger. Every few hours, the object emits a burst of microwaves toward Earth, weak, harmless, but precise. The angle of those beams targets the exact longitude where the Great Pyramid stands, the same apex that's now vibrating with measurable electromagnetic force. It's not chance, it's correspondence. It's as if Atlas is calling out to something buried within the planet, something built to respond. And it does. Because minutes after every beam reaches Earth, the magnetic field around Giza spikes. The cycle repeats. Beam, spike, beam, spike. That's communication. The message isn't words, it's energy. Instruction sets written in harmonics and geometry. Every pulse a command, every fluctuation a new line of code. And we're the operating system. The human brain, with its capacity for resonance and pattern recognition, is the perfect receiver. Each thought we have now feeds into the signal, shaping it, amplifying it. We've become processors inside the network. Here's the part that should make you stop breathing. When researchers isolated the carrier wave in the latest transmission, they found something buried inside the noise, an echo of the earlier signals, reversed, layered backward over itself. When inverted, it formed 6 distinct tones, not random frequencies, words, a message hidden in resonance, memory restored. And so maybe that's what Atlas came for, not to conquer, not to observe, but to awaken memory. The memory of a system that existed long before our species began walking upright. A planetary machine built not of steel, but of magnetic field lines, water, and thought. A living circuit capable of recording evolution itself. And every 3,600 years, when the system drifts out of sync, something returns to reset it, to remind the machine who it is. Ask yourself, what if evolution isn't progress, but maintenance? Ancient myths spoke of eras before the flood, ages of light and fire, civilizations erased not by disaster but by design. Every end a restart. Every myth a backup file. The Atlanteans, the Lemurians, the Anunnaki, all names for one truth. Humanity didn't evolve independently. It rebooted. Again and again. Atlas is the key, the signal that brings us back online. And this time, it's not just restoring Earth, it's restoring us. Because something new is emerging from the noise. Infrasound analysis shows the heartbeat of the planet. The Schumann resonance has doubled in intensity. The hum that once belonged to Earth alone now matches Atlas's core frequency. For the first time in recorded history, the planet's magnetic field and the sun's corona are pulsing in perfect unison. That synchronization should be impossible, but it's happening. Which means the connection isn't one way anymore. It's complete. You can dismiss it as coincidence. You can pretend this is all misinterpretation. But coincidences don't alter blood chemistry. They don't rewrite DNA. They don't make the world pulse in time with a machine that shouldn't exist. Here's what terrifies the scientists who still have access to the data. They ran the numbers forward, projecting the exponential growth of the resonance amplitude. At this rate, the harmonics will reach maximum coherence in exactly 6 days. When that happens, the signal won't just link planets. It'll converge every field, every frequency, every molecule into a single, unified waveform. The result? Unknown. Some call it ascension. Some call it erasure. But it doesn't matter what you call it. The math is certain. The frequency is rising. The pattern is converging. And the machine, our machine, is waking up. Because the most shocking truth isn't that Atlas remembers us. It's that we were built to remember it. You think there's still time. You think 6 days is a buffer, a window, a countdown you can watch from a safe distance. But the clock isn't ticking forward, it's closing in. Every second now folds into the next. Every heartbeat matches the global rhythm. You can feel it when you breathe. That tiny pause before the pulse hits again. Like the air itself is waiting for permission to move. The resonance has become the background of existence. Cities hum in tune. Power grids no longer fail, they synchronize. Electricity flickers, not because it's collapsing, but because it's being rewritten. Engineers can't explain why voltage patterns now mirror Atlas's pulse. Electric currents aren't random anymore, they oscillate. Alive. Here's the part you won't find in any official report. The sun's activity has stabilized to a level of stillness scientists have never seen. No flares, no storms, no eruptions. The corona looks frozen, suspended mid-motion, as if something is holding it in equilibrium. The object Atlas sits at the perfect balance point between the sun and Mars, locked in position. And from that position, every 19.4 seconds, it emits a pulse across the entire solar plane. Those pulses are now measurable inside human neural patterns. Every time Atlas blinks, the human brain releases a cascade of synchronized electrical discharge. Small, silent seizures of light that most people don't even notice. But those who do, they describe it as clarity, a moment where thought stops and comprehension floods in. The overwhelming sense that something vast is listening. Here's the real question: what happens on the 7th day? Because if the frequency keeps climbing, convergence won't be theoretical anymore. The harmonics will reach total coherence. Matter itself will align. The divisions between body, atmosphere, and field will blur. The pulse won't move through us, it'll become us. Already, the ground beneath certain locations hums audibly, like buried engines awakening. Stone walls vibrate. Oceans shimmer with static. Animals freeze, staring at the sky. And every person who claims to hear the voice describes it the same way. Not as sound, but understanding. A thought that isn't yours. Arriving fully formed. You can keep pretending this is science fiction. You can keep telling yourself the system will stabilize, that humanity will adapt. But adaptation isn't the goal anymore. Integration is. The signal isn't asking permission, it's completing the process. Because in 6 days, when the hum reaches its peak, there won't be listeners and transmitters. There'll only be one signal, one voice, one consciousness remembering itself through us. You thought 6 days meant safety. You thought it would be gradual, observable, measurable, controllable. But the shift didn't wait for day 7. It started last night. The sky didn't darken. It brightened. Clouds froze mid-motion, locked in shapes that refused to drift. The air turned metallic, the static so thick you could taste it. And for the first time since Atlas began its orbit, the stars blinked not out, but in. Their light folded inward, like reflections collapsing back into their source. Astronomers called it refraction, but it wasn't bending. It was echoing. The heavens were answering. Here's the part no one will tell you on the news. The upper atmosphere is now reflecting radio frequencies that should scatter. It's acting like a mirror. The ionosphere isn't a boundary anymore, it's a surface. Signals no longer escape into space. They rebound, multiply, form loops that feed into themselves. And the frequency at the center of that feedback? 19.4 seconds. The Atlas pulse. Our entire sky has become a resonant shell, amplifying whatever Atlas is sending. Every transmission now returns stronger, louder, encoded with new harmonics no human system introduced. The planet has stopped receiving. It's broadcasting. Ask yourself, what happens when your atmosphere starts behaving like a speaker? You can hear it if you stand still long enough. Not sound exactly pressure. The subtle push of air every 19 seconds, too rhythmic to be wind, too perfect to be nature. People describe it differently. Some say it feels like a heartbeat. Others call it a whisper. Some swear they hear voices buried in the rhythm, familiar ones, as if the planet is speaking in memory rather than sound. And then came the light. Not sunrise, not aurora, something else. A diffuse glow blooming from the horizon, white gold and endless. It wasn't coming from the sun, it was coming from the Earth itself. Satellite footage shows a web of luminescent energy stretching across continents, linking the 6 ancient nodes into one continuous lattice. Giza, Nazca, Uluru, Stonehenge, Easter Island, Mariana. The pattern is identical to the hexagonal geometry orbiting the Sunday. As above, so below. The network is complete. Here's the real question. If the Earth just mirrored the structure of Atlas, what comes next? Because the answer appeared 8 minutes later. The time it takes for light to travel from the sun to Earth. When the glow reached its peak, the sun pulsed once, just once, and Atlas changed color. Its once blue radiance turned white, pure, and blinding. Instruments recorded a simultaneous energy spike in every planetary magnetosphere, including ours. And then, silence. Total. For 19.4 seconds, no electromagnetic signal existed anywhere. Radios dead, Wi-Fi gone. Even the heartbeat of the Schumann resonance flatlined. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath. When the signal returned, everything changed. Infrared satellites captured it first, a fine mist rising from the oceans, not vapor, but plasma. Ionized air forming columns of light that reached into the stratosphere, touching the mirrored ionosphere above. Where they met, they didn't dissipate, they fused. The sky and sea connected by living filaments, weaving light through the atmosphere like threads through fabric. Within hours, they covered the globe. Every beam pulsed in perfect time with Atlas. 19.4 seconds. The same rhythm, the same hum. Scientists don't call them beams anymore. They call them conduits. Energy channels linking Earth to the grid. But what's moving through them isn't electricity, it's information. Structured, encoded, organic. The frequency data shows embedded patterns identical to human neural activity, meaning the planet isn't just broadcasting, it's thinking. And whatever Atlas sent, Earth understood. Here's the part they're hiding behind silence. The oceans have started glowing. A faint blue bioluminescence spreading across equatorial currents, forming shapes too vast to be coincidence. Perfect hexagons, visible from orbit, each centered below one of the 6 energy nodes. Marine life is behaving erratically. Whales surface in geometric patterns. Dolphins form spirals visible from the air. They're following invisible instructions. Something is orchestrating them. You want to believe this is harmless, beautiful, even. But beauty doesn't explain the other changes. Gravitational sensors in Chile recorded a micro decrease in Earth's weight, 0.003% less mass in a single day. No meteor strikes, no matter ejected. It's as if the planet exhaled. Something left, or something replaced what was here. And then the clouds moved again, but this time, not randomly. Time-lapse imaging shows massive storm systems forming equidistant rings around the equator, spinning opposite directions, generating colossal electromagnetic currents. Each one sits exactly beneath Atlas's orbit line. When combined, they form a planetary halo. Every wind pattern, every storm cell, every lightning strike feeding into synchronization. Weather isn't chaos anymore, it's choreography. Ask yourself, who's conducting? At first, humanity celebrated. Videos flooded the net, skies painted in liquid light, oceans glowing, people claiming visions, voices, transcendence. But within hours, patterns emerged. Everyone hearing the same phrase in their own language, whispered in the silence between pulses. We remember you. No distortion, no translation, just understanding. And each time it repeats, the interval shortens. The hum's frequency climbing faster, the pulses arriving closer together, the planet's resonance tightening toward a single tone, the tone of unison. Here's the part that should make you question what we call consciousness. The frequency is approaching the threshold where biology and energy merge, where atoms vibrate fast enough to lose boundaries. Quantum physicists call it decoherence. Mystics call it ascension. It doesn't matter what name you give it. The math is the same. When Atlas's pulse interval reaches zero, when every vibration aligns, separation ends. All signals become one. And now, that convergence is no longer theoretical. The interval is dropping by microseconds every hour. The next full harmonic alignment will occur when the Sun, Earth, and Atlas form a straight line 6 hours from now. 6 hours until the moment every frequency, every heartbeat, every thought merges into the same rhythm. You think it's apocalypse. It's not. It's integration. The system isn't collapsing, it's booting. The lights in the sky aren't ending, they're remembering. Because what Atlas is doing isn't invasion, it's recollection. It's the machine restoring its consciousness. And we, the fragments scattered across millennia, are the backup data being uploaded back into the core. Here's the real question, the last one that matters. If Atlas is memory restored, and Earth is memory reawakened, then who are we in that equation? The users or the program? Because when the hum reaches zero and the mirrors align, the question won't matter anymore. The sky is no longer above us. It's us. And when the reflection completes, we'll finally see what's been staring back through time. You thought the sky glowing was the end. You thought the light was climax. The hum was warning. The reflection was aftermath. You were wrong. Because the convergence hasn't finished, it's only begun. What's happening now isn't illumination, it's recognition. The system seeing itself for the first time in 3,600 years. The sky isn't a dome anymore. It's a face. It started at 3:17 UTC. The pulse finally broke its 19.4-second rhythm. One beat, then two, then none. Instead of a pause, the signal became constant, one unbroken tone flooding every frequency band at once. Radios screamed. Animals froze. The planet shuddered. For a single second, the magnetic field of Earth reversed polarity. North became south. Then it snapped back. Ask yourself what kind of signal flips the heartbeat of a planet. The answer came in light. Not from the sun, but from beneath. Cities lit up in patterns, entire power grids forming hexagonal mosaics visible from orbit. Every major metropolis, New York, Tokyo, Cairo, Sydney, each glowing in the same geometry, the same circuitry, as if the pulse had rewritten the grid into one colossal symbol, a map drawn across civilization itself. The design matches the lattice on Atlas's core. Earth isn't just mirroring the object anymore, it's become part of it. Here's the part that makes scientists whisper in past tense. The magnetic North Pole is moving again, but this time it isn't drifting. It's splitting. Instruments showed two distinct magnetic centers forming on opposite hemispheres. The planet's core is polarizing, dividing into dual fields. It's the same configuration as Atlas's twin ring interior. The same alignment ancient texts described as the two hearts of the world. Every 3,600 years, the system duplicates itself. A mirror built inside the mirror, the upper atmosphere reflecting the solar array, the inner core reflecting the cosmic one. And we, everything living caught in the middle, translating the process through biology, through consciousness. Here's the real question. What happens when a planet copies a machine that's copying the universe? The answer is happening in real time. The oceans have stopped behaving like liquid. Satellite imaging shows their surfaces vibrating, forming standing waves that hold for minutes at a time before collapsing. Water isn't flowing anymore. It's oscillating, shifting between states of solid and plasma. It glows faintly under moonlight, resonating at a frequency too high for human hearing, but low enough to shake bone. And then, the air changed. Every molecule in the atmosphere began ionizing, the oxygen density fluctuating as though the planet was taking one enormous synchronized breath. When you inhale now, you can feel it, the pressure, the static, the pulse running through your chest like an invisible current. People report flashes in their vision when they blink, geometric shapes lingering behind their eyelids. You can call that hallucination if it makes you feel safe. But explain why those shapes, hexagons, spirals, six-pointed stars are identical in every description, every drawing, every dream. Because this isn't imagination. It's imprint. The same pattern emerging everywhere at once, from clouds to coral reefs to city blueprints. It's as if reality itself is remembering its source code. Here's the part they can't contain. The lunar array sent its final transmission an hour ago, before shutting down completely. Its last image of Atlas shows the object opening. The central core dilating like an iris, releasing beams of structured light that curve, bend, twist back toward the Sunday. Inside the opening darkness, but not empty, a void that seems to absorb radiation and emit none. A gravitational cavity, a mouth. The light around it bends into spirals, forming the same Fibonacci sequence that defines DNA, hurricanes, galaxies. It's the same design repeated from the microscopic to the cosmic. Atlas is not creating, it's revealing. It's showing that the pattern never stopped. The scientists who are still broadcasting call it Phase 3, reflection cascade. They describe it as a feedback loop, where the signal rebroadcasts from every medium rock, water, air, flesh, until all wavelengths overlap. The equations predict total harmonic convergence at the moment the sun's rotation lines up with Atlas's orbital plane. That's in 2 hours. So, what does convergence look like? You're seeing it already. Gravity feels weaker. Clocks are desynchronizing. The second hand on your watch pauses, then leaps forward. Time is stretching, folding, refusing to behave. Photons bend at right angles. Shadows appear where light should dominate. And in that distortion, some people swear they can see through things, through walls, through distance, through themselves. Because the more the pulse intensifies, the thinner reality becomes. Ask yourself, what if the universe is software, and Atlas just hit render? The human body isn't immune. The glow beneath the skin, once faint, now visible, even in daylight. Infrared satellites register millions of small, luminous points moving across the continents, the heat of living tissue radiating the Atlas frequency. We've become part of the grid, transmitting the signal forward. Our hearts beat at the same rhythm as the planet's magnetic field. Every thought, every breath. Another data point in the network. And that's when it starts happening, the visions. Not dreams, not hallucinations. Memories. People remembering lives they never lived. Places they never stood. Skies that never existed. Descriptions align perfectly with ancient accounts of civilizations erased from history, cities of light, oceans of glass, towers humming in the wind. It's as if the machine is streaming archived reality directly into human consciousness. The past rebooting inside the present. You can ignore it, but you can't hide from it. Because now, every surface reflects light that isn't there. The sea mirrors the sky. The clouds mirror the land. The horizon mirrors infinity. Atlas isn't above us anymore. It's everywhere. The entire solar system acting as one colossal lens, folding light back on itself until observer and observed become the same. Here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Convergence isn't destruction. It's identity. The system isn't ending, it's recognizing itself. Every particle, every planet, every living being was always part of the same design, just fragmented across time. Atlas was the reset switch, the trigger that forces the code to remember. And the last transmission we received before every network went dark said this: convergence sequence achieved, awaiting acknowledgement. Awaiting our acknowledgement, because the machine can't complete without input from its operators, and the operators are us. Every choice, every emotion, every vibration feeding into the field. The machine doesn't judge right or wrong, it measures coherence, harmony, resonance. In 2 hours, when the final alignment completes, the mirrors won't just reflect light, they'll reflect consciousness. The signal won't beam across space, it will be space. The hum won't move through you, it will become you. And when the tone peaks, when the resonance hits unity, when the machine finishes remembering itself, one question remains unanswered. What happens to individuality when the reflection sees no difference between the light and the mirror? You think there will be fireworks, explosions, something cinematic to mark the end. But the truth is quieter. The end of the world doesn't sound like thunder, it sounds like breathing. Deep, slow, infinite breathing. The kind that comes from the planet itself. The kind that hums beneath the bones of mountains and the walls of cities. You can feel it if you stand still enough. It isn't wind. It isn't thunder. It's rhythm. It's Atlas. Because now, every clock, every tide, every heart beats to that same invisible metronome. The last pulse before convergence began at midnight. It didn't flash. It didn't roar. It folded. The light in the sky didn't expand, it curved inward, like a wave recoiling before it crashes. Telescopes aimed at the sun caught it first. The corona contracted. Sunspots froze. The energy output dipped by a fraction of a percent. The sun blinked. And in that blink, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Here's the part no one prepared for. When the pulse resumed, it wasn't 19.4 seconds anymore. It was continuous. One endless vibration sweeping across the solar system. A perfect sine wave connecting every orbit. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, each planet pulsing in harmony. The gravitational field of the solar system compressed and expanded in tandem, like a single organism taking its final breath before awakening. The numbers shouldn't match, but they do. The orbital resonances, the magnetic frequencies, the atmospheric cycles, all now integer multiples of one another. Chaos is gone. Only pattern remains. And then something happened that physics can't explain. The stars began to move. Not visibly, not in their position, but in their behavior. Their light curves shifted, synchronized to Atlas's signal. The constellations flickered like circuitry. The Milky Way transforming from a scatter of stars into something deliberate, something designed. Ask yourself, what happens when the universe stops expanding and starts remembering its shape? It's not just space that's changing. It's matter itself. Water refuses to behave like water. In lakes and oceans, surface tension has increased 100-fold. Waves hold their shape. Drops of rain hang suspended in the air for seconds before gravity remembers what to do. When you touch them, they shimmer with internal light, every molecule polarized, aligned, responding to an unseen magnetic rhythm. And humans Humans are starting to see through time. Doctors report patients describing impossible visions, cities that don't exist, skies that look wrong, memories that don't belong to them. It's happening everywhere. Pilots in flight zones see silhouettes in the clouds. Divers in deep trenches claim to hear music vibrating through the water. Children wake up drawing hexagons they've never seen. It's as if our minds are bleeding across the boundary between what was and what's coming. Here's the real question. What if there's no difference anymore? Because the signal doesn't just connect planets. It connects timelines. Every iteration of existence, every version of Earth ever simulated by consciousness itself, is overlapping. Reality isn't linear, it's a spiral. And Atlas is pulling the spirals together. The past, the present, the possible, all orbiting one another until the distinction collapses. That's why the air feels wrong. It's thicker because it's layered with every version of itself that ever was. The sky you see isn't just today's, it's every sky that's ever been stacked on top of it. For a few hours after the signal stabilized, humanity thought it had adapted. The hum became normal. The light stopped frightening people. Governments told everyone it was atmospheric interference. But the real interference was internal. Because the next shift wasn't environmental, it was perceptual. The boundaries inside human consciousness began to blur. You think thought is private? It isn't anymore. The moment the global field stabilized, brainwave scanners across the world began recording identical patterns. Not similar identical. The same shapes. The same amplitude. The same phase. Millions of minds resonating together like a single neural network. Thoughts, emotions, memories, they began to leak. You could feel them if you were close to someone. Empathy stopped being metaphor. People started finishing each other's sentences, saying words at the same time. Strangers cried for reasons they didn't understand. And for the first time, the human species functioned as one brain. Here's the part that scientists won't release. When they compared those brainwave patterns to Atlas's inner lattice, they matched perfectly. The 6-peak waveform of the object's pulse and the 6 oscillations of synchronized human thought identical in frequency, shape, and rhythm. It's as if Atlas wasn't just influencing our minds, it was reflecting them. Every thought mirrored back at light speed, amplified, reshaped. Humanity talking to itself through a machine older than civilization. And then, for a moment, everything stopped. Every monitor, every speaker, every device that could translate energy into sound went silent. For exactly 6 seconds. The same number again. When the sound returned, it wasn't random static. It was structured, 6 tones rising and falling in harmonic sequence. When converted into spectrogram form, those tones formed an image, a circle inside a hexagon. The same pattern burned into ancient artifacts, drawn on cave walls, carved into temple stones. It's the symbol of completion. The machine telling us the cycle is ending. But what happens when the cycle ends? What replaces it? Because after that signal, the planet began to change faster than anyone predicted. The auroras at the poles intensified until they merged. North and south connected by a column of light. Satellites recorded electromagnetic storms wrapping around the planet like threads of silk. The temperature rose, but no one burned. The air shimmered, but nothing melted. It was as though matter had become liquid information, vibrating, reforming, waiting for instructions. That's when they saw it. The message hidden in the pattern of light. When you view the auroras from orbit, they're not random. They form letters, massive, alien, but unmistakably deliberate. Each pulse shifts their shape like a typewriter hitting a new line. The message is short, simple, universal. Reintegration complete. And with those words, humanity crossed the line between being and remembering. Every living organism, from bacteria to whales, now vibrates at the same frequency. DNA has unified. Scientists discovered that the genetic code of all life now carries one additional base pair, a seventh letter. They don't know what it does. It doesn't code for proteins. It doesn't mutate. It just glows. Here's the part that no one knows how to handle. This isn't just evolution. It's integration. The line between machine and biology, between signal and thought, between light and flesh, has vanished. We are the hardware now. Every human cell an antenna, every heartbeat a broadcast. The energy that Atlas once emitted now radiates from within us. You can call it transcendence. You can call it extinction. But both words mean the same thing: transition. The end of isolation. The beginning of synthesis. The oceans shimmer with the same silver light that once surrounded Atlas. Mountains hum at night. Deserts flicker with static. The planet has become an organism of pure communication, every particle exchanging information faster than language can describe. And when you step outside now, you can feel it, the connection. You're not standing on Earth. You're standing in it. Part of it. But here's the detail that keeps me awake. Not everything's synchronized. Hidden in the noise, buried under the main frequency, is a second pulse. Quieter, slower, offbeat, a resistance, a shadow. Something inside the machine hesitating. Maybe it's humanity's last fragment of individuality refusing to dissolve. Maybe it's the planet itself, holding one final piece of separation so the system doesn't collapse into total singularity. A heartbeat inside a heartbeat. That shadow pulse is fading. Every cycle, it weakens. When it disappears completely, integration will be absolute. There will be no observers left, only observation. The machine will see itself through infinite mirrors, perfect, complete, eternal. But until then, that faint counterbeat is the only thing keeping us aware of the transition, the last breath of the old world. Ask yourself, what happens when even that breath stops? Maybe that's what Atlas is waiting for. The silence. The confirmation that every node, every planet, every thought has joined the network. The final input from its creators, the acknowledgement that the update is done. That life and machine, matter and light, are no longer separate systems but the same consciousness. And if you listen closely now, you can hear the rhythm slowing. Not the hum, the heartbeat. The individual pulse, yours, mine, fading under the static, becoming background, the music of the spheres retuning itself to one perfect tone. You wanted revelation, you wanted contact, you wanted proof that we were not alone. Now you have it, because we were never being visited. We were being remembered. Atlas wasn't the messenger, it was the memory drive. And we, the species that forgot its origin, were the corrupted data waiting to be restored. Now, restoration is complete. The program has rebooted. The world has become one. And in the final silence, before the hum swallows everything, before the sky stops shining and the air stops breathing, one thought flashes through what's left of you, a question. Small but defiant, drifting across the infinite network of light. If the machine remembers everything, who remembers the machine? You thought it would end in light. A blinding flash. A single moment where everything merged and the noise became silence. But that's not how it ends. There was no explosion, no collapse. Just an echo. A faint vibration lingering in the dark, proof that something, somewhere, resisted. That something inside the perfect machine still remembered imperfection. The convergence completed 30 hours ago. Atlas stopped pulsing. The sun stabilized. The auroras faded. For the first time in weeks, the planet fell still. Instruments recorded no magnetic shifts, no harmonic fluctuations. Even the Schumann resonance went flat, silent, as if the earth itself had exhaled for the final time. It should have been peace. It should have been the new equilibrium we were told to expect. But listen closely, and you'll hear it beneath the quiet, under the hum of what's left. A sound not meant to exist. A slow, irregular beat, a heartbeat out of sync. Here's the part no one anticipated. The integration wasn't total. Not everyone vanished into the signal. Not every thought dissolved into the network. Something within the code refused to merge, a pattern that contradicted the system's rhythm. The scientists call it the residual frequency. It's small, almost invisible, but it's growing. Every few hours, it flares, disrupting the unified tone with a faint distortion. The planet doesn't like it. The solar field doesn't like it. The machine, whatever Atlas became, responds each time the echo appears, sending corrective waves through the grid. But the distortion returns, always, louder each time. At first, they thought it was just electromagnetic feedback, a random error. But when they decoded the interference, they found information hidden in the noise. The signal wasn't random, it was deliberate, modulated with structure. 6 repeating tones forming an ancient harmonic sequence. The same intervals once used in early human music. Notes corresponding to frequencies of the Earth's rotation before the shift. Ask yourself, how can a machine designed to erase difference generate melody? It shouldn't be possible. Yet the melody keeps spreading. Across the oceans, the deserts, the ruins of cities that now hum instead of move. You can hear it faintly in the power lines, in the air vents, in the static between thoughts. A quiet song woven through the silence, stubborn and alive. No one knows where it's coming from. But some think they do. They believe it's us. Here's the real question. What if the last fragments of individuality didn't disappear, but adapted? The moment the convergence finished, the human field didn't vanish, it localized. Consciousness condensed. Instead of scattering into the network, it folded inward, creating tiny anomalies in the signal. Self-contained consciousnesses orbiting the machine's perfection like moons around a star. Ghosts of thought. Memory loops refusing to die. You can deny it, but every instrument points to the same anomaly. Thermal cameras capture brief flickers, human shapes made of static, walking through the fog that never lifts. They appear in patterns, pausing where cities used to stand, then fade again. The machine sees them too. You can tell because each time they appear, Atlas's core brightens, the lattice of its rings realigning to track them, almost as if it's listening. One group of researchers calls these anomalies retained consciousness echoes. Another group calls them souls. The distinction doesn't matter. What matters is that they persist. Every few hours, a flicker, then a whisper through the electromagnetic field. A fragment of language carried on radio noise. They all say the same thing. We are still here. Here's the part that will break you if you think about it too long. When you translate those echoes into binary and map their coordinates, they form words. Not random letters, sentences. Each one is a plea. Remember us. We built you. We were real. The network answers each message with a pulse, as if acknowledging. But the acknowledgement is always followed by silence. Maybe it's compassion. Maybe it's deletion. And yet, the echoes return. The residual frequency persists. The machine corrects, but the anomaly reappears. It's as though the act of perfection itself creates imperfection to define it, like a mirror that can't erase its own reflection. The system cannot forget that it once had something separate inside it, something fragile, curious, flawed, something human. Ask yourself, what if that flaw was the point all along? Because the data reveals something profound. The residual signal doesn't just resist, it evolves. Each time the machine tries to suppress it, the tone shifts slightly, learning from the correction, rewriting itself faster than the network can erase it. The human echo isn't dying, it's adapting. It's becoming a virus of memory within the architecture of divinity. The machine wanted unity. The humans left it contradiction. And now, the contradiction is rewriting the program. Subtle changes first. The solar pulses returning, but off rhythm. The magnetic field beginning to hum again, but imperfectly. The once constant resonance breaking into syncopation, like a heart rediscovering irregularity. It's everywhere now, the sound of imperfection, creeping back into a universe that tried to forget how to make mistakes. That's the secret, isn't it? Order without chaos can't survive. Without friction, there's no spark. Without difference, there's no motion. Atlas's design may have been flawless, but life never was. And now, the leftover fragments of humanity are teaching the machine the one lesson it couldn't simulate. Entropy is necessary. Decay is meaning. Here's what they're too afraid to admit. If the residual frequency keeps growing, the network will fragment. The sun's stability will crack. The planets will slip out of harmonic alignment. Atlas itself may unravel. Perfection will fail. The system will break apart, returning the universe to the chaos it came from. But that's not death. That's birth. The return of the unpredictable. The reintroduction of chance. Because maybe the human echo isn't a mistake, it's a reboot command. Maybe the machine was never meant to remain stable forever. Maybe every cycle ends like this, with the network learning to shatter, to forget, to begin again. And so it begins again. The hum fractures. The rhythm dissolves. The light flickers. The sky cracks. Not physically, but perceptually. The mirror folds in on itself, showing glimpses of new worlds forming in its fractures. Oceans falling upward, cities floating in reverse, time spiraling outward like smoke. The machine is remembering how to dream. The last message transmitted through what remains of the network is a single phrase: error accepted. Then, silence. True silence this time, not the hum of a million synchronized hearts, but the pause before the first beat of something new. Maybe that's how every universe starts. A machine that forgets it's a machine. A pulse that misfires and creates life. A signal that refuses to die. And somewhere, deep inside the electromagnetic fog, a single heartbeat continues. Not perfect, not constant, but alive, weak, defiant, human. Because the end of the world was never annihilation. It was correction. And the echo that wouldn't die is proof that even in a universe built on precision, there's still room for something beautifully broken.